I think my grief-stricken husband is having an affair with his therapist, so I'm thinking of destroying her career and divorcing him. When my husband's sister was unalived in an armed robbery gone wrong 2 years ago, everything changed. He and his sister were super close, their parents were substance addicts and my husband and his sister grew up relying on each other and helping each other through everything. I knew her and she was a great woman and her passing hurt me too, but seeing how it affected my husband completely broke me. He went from a free and bouncy spirit to quiet and sheltered. He cried every single day and would loom at the pictures of the two of them every day too. He was fired from his job because he refused to show up for work because he couldn't get out of bed. Depression consumed him. He refused to eat, refused to go outside, didn't want to see me or even talk to me most days, and of course our life in the bedroom died too. He carried on this way for a full year straight and our marriage was dying rapidly. I remember coming home after working a 12-hour shift with flowers for him. I spent an hour and a half making his favorite home-cooked meal and told him to come downstairs for dinner. He refused to come down and told me he'd rather not eat today. He didn't even accept the flowers, telling me to throw them away. I didn't throw them away, however. But I noticed they were out of the house a few weeks later. The next time I visited his sister's grave myself to pay respects, I noticed them there. I cried alone seeing that. I suggested therapy to my husband shortly after, and surprisingly he seemed accepting of the idea. He said he wanted to go alone, however, and I researched the therapist and helped him pick one he liked. He started attending therapy 10 months ago and he has started improving. He started opening up slowly and his eyes regained the spark that they once had. I was super proud of my husband and let him know how amazing I thought he was. But now I think the reason for his spark being back. You see, on days he has therapy he wakes up super excited. With way more joy than on a day where we have a date planned. It's like the prospect of therapy makes him happy. I have never questioned him about this, of course, but I did take note of it. He stated once that his therapist gave him her personal phone number and not her work phone number because she cared so much about him she wanted him to be able to reach her outside of work hours. This seemed super unprofessional to me, but I let it go at the time. However, over time I started to suspect things, especially when he came home 3 months ago with his button-up shirt undone with 2 buttons, which was low enough to expose his entire chest. I asked him about it and he said it's weird how I noticed that, then he said it was too hot in the car on the way home so he undid them. Plausible, I suppose, but then a few weeks later he came home from therapy with a very subtle smell of wine on his breath. I asked him why his breath smelled like wine and he said he picked some up from the store on his way home and taste tested it before coming into the house. I asked him why he didn't bring it inside, however, and he claimed he decided to throw it away because he didn't think I'd like it anyway. Alarm bells were seriously going off in my head now, especially because I had seen his therapist. She is exactly his type. My husband and I also don't have much intimacy anymore, which is weird because he always talks about his libido coming back, which is leading me to believe that he is getting it somewhere else. So last month I decided to do something I should not have done and I put a tracker into his car before he left for therapy. I noticed that the tracker showed him going to his therapy appointment, then driving to a different address before coming home. I kept my findings to myself, however. Last week I did something which put the final nail in our marriage in my opinion. When he went to therapy, I tailgated a few minutes later without him noticing, and I saw him and his therapist exit the building and get in his car. I ended up following them from afar and using the tracker which was still in his car to pinpoint the location, and I arrived at a restaurant. I sat there for an hour and a half waiting, and I finally saw them leave holding hands. I wasted no time taking pictures and capturing evidence of my husband cheating and of the therapist being extremely unprofessional. Now my question is, do I simply serve him with papers or do I expose her too and get her license revoked?